All right, we're going to start our negative space layers watercolor for Art 1. And first thing you have to do is stretch your paper. So on a piece of cardboard that we'll have in class, you're going to take your paper, and this one is half size. It's the first one you're going to do. You're going to do two of them. The other one's going to be full size, but this is better for our demo. You're going to stretch your paper, which means put a piece of masking tape on all four sides. And I've done three sides, but the good idea is to take the masking tape and just fold the end of fold over the one end. Then when you put the tape on, put the tape on about halfway into the tape. Okay, or the paper should be halfway through the tape. You can kind of see through it. And then make sure that's nice and secure. All right, now we're ready to paint. Let's get your paints out. A few minutes ago, I took a little bit of water and I just brushed a little bit of clean water into each one of these pads. All right, that's all there was to it. And then you have to, if the pad of color is dry, it takes a few minutes to work its way in, kind of like a dry sponge. Um, then all I did, and I'll make another green over here, I just took some water and just kind of thinned it out a little bit. I'm going to use a little more water, and you want to make the color for this first layer, you want to make it a little bit see-through, a little bit transparent. Okay, you want to see through to the white of the palette back there, especially when you kind of do this, you can see through it. And that's a pretty dark color, that's fine, but we don't want it too dark. So that's going to be just off camera. I'll refer to it because here we want this first undercoat to be nice and light. All right, so I have all of my colors made, ready to go. You need to use analogous colors. Okay, you want to either use the blue, the purple, blue, and green, or two of those, or use the warm colors. Cool colors or warm colors work the best. Yellow is okay for the first coat, but after the first coat, yellow gets out of there. You use mostly reds and oranges. And you'll see that in a few samples. All right, we have a Hake brush, or a Hake brush, H-A-K-E. It's great for applying a lot of water, and that's what we're going to do first. You need to clean out your water. My water is really clean. You don't even see it going on here. And you just kind of quickly lay it all over. You can bump into the tape, that's fine. I'm reloading. And we're going to put enough water on here so if you were to tip the cardboard, you could see the water gently move across the board or across the paper. Now, watercolor paper is just a big, really flat sponge. It's intended to take water. And you can see how I'm kind of starting to evenly get it on there. Make sure you don't miss any spots. Now, it should be able to see there's that shine. That says that it's really wet. If you see a little hair from the brush on the paper, don't worry. It'll come off later. Now, I just take a moment or two, making sure I'm looking at it with my head tilted and looking to see if I missed any spots. And you need that water to soak in a little bit. The paper will get a little bit warped, and that's okay. That's pretty normal. So we want this layer to really bleed and blend a lot. So that's why we put a lot of water. Now, if you tip the board, the water should not just run right off. Not at all. Okay, that's too much water. Now, here's what we do. We're going to grab any color and just gently kind of paint it wherever we want. Okay, I'm going to grab the blue and let it bump into the purple. And see, it's kind of light and soft. I'm going to grab the green. Doesn't matter which one you do. But what you want to do is let these colors kind of be separate from each other here. They will bleed together in a moment. I'm going to grab the blue, put some more blue down here so there's very little white space. But I did not overlap the colors. They might bump into each other a little bit. Now, color gets lighter when you add it to paper that's wet. It's like adding water to your paint set. The colors get a little bit lighter. Now there should be enough water on here, hopefully. And if there isn't, I'll show you what to do. Now see, when I start to do that, look at it move. See it kind of moves slowly. So I'm going to move it to the left. I'm going to move it a little bit that way. And I'm going to move it a little bit to the right. And a little bit that way. So this area right here isn't moving. So what I'm going to do is take my Hake brush and just kind of go drop, drop, drop. If the paper is still wet, I can do that. If the paper is real dry, I would have to start all over again. And I could do it right on top of here, but I'd have to really start all over again. Right here it's not moving. So I'm going to take just the corner of my Hake brush and just go blop, blop. Just a little bit of water to make it start to move. And again, only do that if the paper's still wet. Down here it's not moving around at all. So I'm just going to blop, 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 a couple of plops of water. And you can see that it's very shiny still. It's very wet still. But there isn't so much water that it's trying to jump off. There's a little drip right down here. No big deal. It's okay if there are some soft, kind of lighter areas. Now, if I set this down, let me do it this way. If I set this down, the warping of the paper is going to collect some of the color. You can see right there. That's what we don't want. Okay, so I'm going to make sure to pick this up. Let me get a little farther away here too, so when I pick it up, it doesn't go off camera. So I'm going to pick it up. Watch that blue. See it moving a little bit? Then I'm going to go this way. Now see how these colors are kind of blending in together softly? There's a big puddle of water right there. I'm going to try to make it go back that way just by leaning the board. Now if you have a lot of water, watch this trick. Here's a paper towel. Just wipe off a clean brush. See, I've got a big load of water right here. And this is called a thirsty brush. When you wipe off the water and go right to here, see, it kind of sucks it right up. I missed a spot right there in the corner. It just kind of sucks it right up. Then wipe. See, there's a dark spot right there. So I'm just going to, and I missed a spot right there too. So I'm going to just pull some of that. So do not go back in here and paint. That's going to be the downfall. You want it to be a little bit different here and there. It's okay to have some slightly darker spots and some slightly lighter spots. You can still see the greens and the blues and the violets, but they kind of bleed and blend into each other. Now I'm going to keep moving this for another 4 or 5 minutes, and then I'm going to blow dry it. If there's no blow dryer, you just have to keep moving it until it dries on its own. All right, I'm going to stop the video, come back in just a second after I let it dry, and right now it's kind of settling in. It's just working its way around nice and slowly. I missed a couple little tiny spots right there. So you can see it's still real wet, but the paint is not moving around. Don't worry, there's a little hair. I'm going to pull it off of there. All right, I'll be back in just a second after this is dried and you get to see what it's like. All right, this is nice and dry. Look how soft it is. That's exactly what you want. It's better to be a little bit too light than too dark. And you should have little bits of lights and darks, slightly lighter and darker stuff here. So it's nice and dry. It's no longer wavy and warped. When it's dry, it'll go back to flat. And a good idea is to touch it with the back of your hand. And if it feels cool to the touch, it's not dry yet. So that you have to do before the next step. Quite flat. Now you have your 3 cutouts. You're going to use your larger one first. You must do this part of it. These, all you're going to do is trace around your templates. Try to trace just dark enough to see. Okay, so I can see that fine. Oh yeah, you can see that on the video. Now, the trick is that you want to make sure all 4 edges have one of these going off of it. Okay, and the same thing will happen in the smaller ones as well. And it doesn't matter if it goes this way or that way, or that way. All that doesn't matter at all. But what really matters is, let me draw this one first, that these all of these large ones are separate. I would not draw another one here. You can see how it kind of overlaps. And if you want, you can just kind of let the tip hang in there. And you don't want to make them awfully close together either. So I would not draw the next one like right here, because later we're gonna put those in some of the empty places. So it's okay to have, I'm gonna let it go from one edge to the other. And I can totally fit in another, just a part of one right here. That would be great. And I might do just the tip hanging down from the top. And again, it doesn't really matter what way it goes, maybe just the tip of it right there. That is the next step. Then we'll get our colors ready, and I'll go over that with you as well. And we'll start painting in just a second. Okay, now we're going to paint on the dry surface after you have outlined your largest shapes. And remember, they do not bump into each other. Okay, you need to leave some space between them. All right, so when you make your color, a few moments ago, I dripped a few drops of water into my blue and green, stick with the same colors. And now we definitely need to make a little puddle of each, and they should be, again, kind of transparent. Okay, that's a little too light. I need a little bit of color in there. And definitely make like a puddle. Don't just make a dry little patch. I mean, get definitely some water in these little puddles. There we go. So we're going to make it just a little bit darker. With watercolor, each time you add a layer of color, it just makes that layer a little darker. That's all there is to it. So you can see through that for the most part. Now I have to make my blue real fast. That's too dark. Excuse me. That's too dark. So I'm going to add a little more color, but I know I'm going to add more water to that too. So you just take your larger brush, and remember, you should have two brushes. You should have the brush that came with the set. That's considered your larger brush. For this painting, you need a little more color. See, I think that's a little too dark. Can't quite see through it yet, so I'm going to add a few drops of clean water to thin it down. See, now we're starting to see through it a little bit, through to the white. And if you're not sure, you can get a little piece of scratch paper and just kind of test your color. See, that's kind of soft. That's kind of a soft blue. So that's fine to do. Now I'm going to move this out of the way so we can have a little more of a close-up on the painting. And I need to move my camera a little bit, make it so you can see that well. Okay, now we are going to paint in the negative space, in the negative space only. Inside these leaves, we're not going to touch it. Okay, that's kind of the trick. Remember, you want a paper towel by your side. This one's my used up one from yesterday. It just dries up. So I'm going to wipe off, the water. And it doesn't matter which color you grab, blue or green, doesn't matter. Or if whatever colors you're using, doesn't matter at all. So I'm right-handed, so whenever I work, I want to see where my tip of my paintbrush hits. I am not going to come over here typically and do the work because it's on the outside. I want to see where I'm touching. And basically what we do is this. We're going to do a little bit of outlining, and then we're going to fill in. And then we're done with that area. Do not go back in and work more. Okay, so we're just going to grab some green. I'm going to go along the outer edge, and I'm going to outline a little bit, an inch or two maybe, and then just kind of fill in behind it. Now, I need to turn the page so I can go up against that leaf. I'm going to grab some blue. You want these colors to kind of mix carefully, and then fill in behind it. That's all there is to it. You are going to have some areas back here that mix and blend and get a little bit lighter and darker. It's totally fine. One thing you never want to do is run out of paint. little bit of outlining, and then quickly fill in. And again, be done with the area. After you've kind of put the color in, be done with it. Don't go back in and work. See, now it's just getting a little bit darker. Each layer we do will get darker. Ideally, you want to keep this edge of the painting wet where you've just finished. But I'm going to show you a little trick here in a second. I'm going to go back over here. So you have to kind of bounce around. See how the paint, the water right here looks kind of heavy? That's good. That's really good. You want to keep that little bit of a heavy bead of paint. See, a little bit of outlining and a little bit of outlining over here. Always have plenty of paint in there. See, now that big puddle of blue, I can use that and start moving over here, going around a little bit of my, and nice big brush strokes. Get it covered up. Go back and get more. My green is a little soft. I'm going to add a little more color to it. Do some outlining. Rest your hand so you have a steady hand. And I'm going to come back here. Now there will be times, look at this big puddle of paint right there. I'm going to move that over and see if it'll join this. Now there's a long area right here. And I don't want that to dry up if I can help it. But sometimes it just will. It happens to me too. Always go back and get more paint. And try to keep the edge of your paint wet. Right out here. I see a little spot I missed right there. So while the paint is still wet, I can touch it. Now here's this little trick that I wanted to show you. If you're in a spot where, let's say over here, I need to kind of leave it alone and come over here and paint for a while, this is called a thirsty brush. So I'm going to just do it right here. I could easily just fill that in, but watch what I do. This is still wet. I'm going to wipe off my brush and kind of use this as if I was going to smear it with my finger. And wipe off my brush and kind of like blending it away. See, it kind of has that soft blend away feel. It's never going to be absolutely perfect, but it has that good feel. So now I can go work over here. And the next parts of this video won't be as long. I won't paint the entire thing since you kind of know what to do. But I will show you each step. So when I'm through with this layer, you should stop the video and paint this layer. That's the idea. Now over here I can just continue. I can just kind of start here and bump into where I did that little fading. Now I may need to do that fading again. So wipe, 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 and just touch, touch, touch. But mine was still a little bit wet. And any little irregularities are going to be covered up. I'm going to show you a finished sample in a second to show you. So I still have to do this corner, get plenty of paint in your brush. And this one's just right. It's just a little bit darker. It's just dark enough to really kind of see where those leaves are. I'm going to grab some green. So that's why in your palette you want to make a good puddle of paint so you don't have to go make more paint in the middle of your painting process. Now again, let's say you have some extra water kind of collecting. See, it's getting darker. It's almost going to drip off. It takes a moment for that to happen. You can take kind of a dry paintbrush and just kind of go whoop, see it disappear, wipe that off, and go whoop. It was happening over here too. You have to look in multiple areas. See right here, that little drip is going to just kind of get sucked up like a straw into, and here it happens over here again. Now there's hardly any there. I can just let that kind of bleed back into the painting. Now, look at this one. See, there are little irregularities. See, some little edgy qualities here and there. It's totally fine. That happens. It kind of gives it some character. Look at this heart. These hearts, same thing. You're going to have some edges between colors. No big deal. Okay, if it happens everywhere, that means it looks like it's unified and it was all meant to be. All right, so now this layer has to get bone dry, and then I'll show you what to do next. All right, next step. This is bone dry. Really, really bone dry. You can't feel any moisture, any cool to the touch, anything. Now we have our samples, our templates. We get that one out of the way. We don't need it. Now we go to the medium size. And we're going to do something similar, except now what I try to do is set myself up so I have smaller sections to paint into. So again, we're going to make it look like these are going behind. And to do that, you just draw the two lines and let it stop at this top one. Now, again, these should never bump into each other. I would not do one there. So I'm going to set this up right here. So it looks like I can paint that section. The smaller kind of the sections are, the easier this next layer is going to be to paint. So instead of doing one here where I have this long section to paint, I'm going to, maybe I'll flip it over and put one like right there. So now I have this section and I can stop another one there. Let's let that go here. And I can do one right here. I can show the tip. Oh, wait, I'm going to do one here. So I can, oh, something happened on my computer screen, but we kept going. Okay. So I can stop this painted section right there. Outline it here. Now I can kind of do one across here. And this is going to still give us room to put in the smallest one later. So remember, do not draw on top of the big ones. And I'm going to flip it over and do it in another direction. Do one right here. Now don't press really hard with your pencil. Whoops, I forgot to do the other side right here. But you need to press hard enough to see it. And I'll do the tip of one coming off the page right there. And then we're going to start painting. I'll be right back. All right, we're going to start painting. Remember, you're going to do the exact same thing getting your paints ready. Pretty transparent, but definitely some color there, but still a little bit transparent. You should be able to see through. I'm going to push that off the page, off the screen there a little bit. And then you can use your larger brush where it's safe to, but you're now going to probably have to start using your smaller brush to get into some of those areas. So you may kind of go back and forth. Now I think it's easier to manage since you don't have that long area that you need to paint. So we just start as carefully as we can. One thing I did not talk about last time, which I should have, is when you paint up against an edge, you do not want to paint like dab, 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 dab. That's this kind of thing. Don't do this. Don't go like that. You want to try to go a nice, clean line with it. Okay, so just know that that's the best way to get this done, I think. I'm going to just barely drop a little bit of blue right against there so there's some contrast right there. All right, so that one's done. Oh, let me get into the corner there a little bit. And again, don't worry about grabbing the same color than you're on top of. Go grab some blue. I had green. I'm going to grab blue. Again, you do the same thing. You do a little bit of outlining and then fill in. Always keeping plenty of paint and water in your brush. And I'll just finish this one and do the rest off camera. And again, if you happen to have a big puddle of water that looks like, if you did this, if it kind of just kind of went running, you can use that dry brush and soak it up with the tip of your brush. Okay, so I'll do the rest and come back to you in a minute. Okay, I came right back to you. My colors were a little bit light, so I just wanted to let you know that I've added a little bit more color to my puddle, and I'm starting to use that smaller brush. This smaller brush, you have to be real careful how hard you press because it's a real loose bristle like a watercolor brush, so you have to have a nice light touch with this, but it's still the same idea. You do a little bit of outlining and then fill in. A little bit of outlining. If you push hard with this brush, it's going to bend and make a big splotch of color. So be careful just to touch the tip nice and gently. Okay, now I'll finish the rest and come back on the last layer, or second to the last layer, excuse me. All right, here we go. Now, this is bone dry again. I've taken my smallest leaf. This is the last one you'll draw around. And I've already done some. And these leaves, you want to put them in places where you only get a partial leaf. Okay, so I traced around this. I skipped over that one and traced around it the rest of the way. And I put one here and I put one here. So all the little places you paint in are smaller. So you're going to paint around every time. Remember, you paint the negative space. You paint around the leaves. So I put one here. I flipped it over and did one there. I'm going to do it like two more. I'll just do a little tip of one right here. Now, students often feel like, there's not enough room to put that last leaf. But you never put the entire leaf. It's only part of it. And I'll put the back end of that leaf right here. And again, that's all I draw right there. So this is going to look like a leaf, and that's going to be a darker background. I have two spaces over here I want to cut up. I'm going to just barely do just the tip of it right there. Maybe you'll leave that space alone. It's pretty small. Now, put that to the side for a second. Your paints. You do the exact same thing again, except now make your paints a little bit darker. Make it harder to see through the paint. A little bit darker is fine, because you want this to even get a little bit darker. Now the whole time I'm going to have to use my small brush. So again, I need to be ready with my paper towel in case there's a real thick area. And I'm going to wipe that out, and I'll grab some green. And again, it doesn't matter what color you grab. Do some outlining and then fill in. You will more often have to go back to your palette and ooh, look how dark that is, and fill up your brush because it's a smaller brush. Ooh, look how nice and dark that is. That might be a shade on the dark side, so I'm going to just pick a little, while it's still wet, I can do that, and just pick up a little bit, and it will kind of bleed back out there. You want this last coat to be a little bit darker. So I'll just do a couple, and we'll stop the video, and I'll show you when I'm done, but we're not quite done yet, because there's one more thing to do after this coat. And again, lay your hand down so it's resting on a dry spot. If there's lots and lots of water there, again, wipe off your brush, tip the paper a little bit, and just go, just kind of suck it up like a little straw, so that big heavy bead of water won't accidentally spill off the edge of the paper. Okay. Again, try not to dab when you paint. Try to go a nice clean line like that one right there. So a little outlining and a little fill in. Now again, students will often keep painting in one area. Why do that? There's no need for it. Once you have filled it in with color, move on to somewhere else. it doesn't do any good at all. It actually makes things look worse because you kind of degrade the paper under there. So just do your thing. Let the watercolor do its trick. Let it kind of just soak in and bleed out. All right, I'll finish the rest and come back. All right, we're almost done. I filled in all of the negative spaces around all of the leaves. Remember, never, 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 never paint inside the leaves or whatever shape you're using. The last thing we do is we just do that one more time to get it nice and deep with color, real rich color. And so in doing that, when you make your colors again, go ahead and make them even one step darker. And honestly, I'm going to use more blue than green to finish this up. I'll mix a little green in there once in a while, but it's mostly blue. And again, I won't do the whole thing, but you are just going to go right. I'll put a little bit of green in my brush also. And I just want to kind of show you the before and after, see how that's even getting darker. Now with watercolor, you may have noticed that watercolor gets lighter after it dries. And you want to make sure that the coat you just put on is bone dry again. Let it dry out, hit it with a blow dryer for a couple minutes, really make sure it's dry. See, that's not dark enough. I'm going to put a little bit of blue in my brush. So you just have to carefully do the exact same thing again with a slightly darker version of your color. There you go. And I'll finish this one and have it in the slideshow, but I did want to show you some other ones so you can see that last smaller spot, see how dark it is? It's not black. Don't use black. Just use a darker version of the same color. And I have several here to kind of go through. This one used more red than orange on that last coat. The last coat is twice. That's a little trick with this thing. Here I used more red, more blues to make that darker purple. And here's some other ones that you haven't seen yet. This is just even smaller. Same kind of thing. Different shapes. See that darker, that's a dark green, nice backdrop. And this one's a little bigger. Let me move away a little bit farther so you can see it more. But there's some hearts. That one's a little bigger, but the same idea. In class, we even would do one bigger. But at home, it's going to be a little different. And there's another one. And there's another one with a different kind of leaf. Remember, when you pick out your shapes, if you pick out too many little teeny tiny little things, it gets to be a little harder to work around them. So there we go. And you're going to do 2 of these and pick your favorite one to hand in for your grade. Okay, so you get to practice. Your first one, if you don't like it, don't worry about it. It was just practice. All right, have fun with this, guys. And also, if you look up on a Google or a YouTube search, if you look up negative space painting, you're going to find some people doing some really cool, wild stuff with this general idea. You might see things like this, but you're going to see some really cool paintings that some people are doing out there. All right, take care.